Hello, my name is Bonnie Z. Cooper, and thank you so much for joining us inside Leisure World. Today I have two lovely ladies that I'd like to introduce you to. I have Kay and Barbara. Both of these young ladies actually live at Leisure World, and I'd like them to share some stories with us today. So Kay, you're involved in the Genealogy Club?
I am. I've been interested in genealogy for about 10 years now. And my family had started it, and a couple of members had worked pretty diligently, but all they had done was collect names and dates and very little on places or any sourcing for the information that they had. So I've worked a good deal on that, and I've worked on the older generations. I moved to Leisure World about 3 years ago with my husband, and we found the Genealogy Club and thought it would be a great fit for us since we were both pretty active in it with our families, and that's kind of how we got involved with the group.
Where are they located?
We're in Clubhouse 3, room 10, which is right off the main lobby of the clubhouse.
And what days are they open?
We're open Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 1 to 4.
So if I come in there and I say, hi, I'd like to find out about my ancestors, what would you tell me? What would be the first thing that I should do?
We would first ask you to fill out a pedigree chart, which is simply a form that has your parents and your grandparents and your great-grandparents on it. And you fill that out to the best of your ability. And we have 9 computers in our library. And we would then go to the computers and get started. We'd start with your parents or your grandparents, depending on their ages, and see what we could find, and your interests, of course.
And do some of the people, when they find out who their ancestors are, do they get kind of upset because maybe they see things they didn't expect?
Well, you're always going to find some unexpected information, but that's kind of the fun of doing it. It might be someone that's quite famous. Doesn't always have to be bad news, and just finding the information itself and helping people locate that is kind of what makes me excited about it. I get real thrilled when someone finds something, especially if they've been looking for quite some time and they come across this information. They go, wow, look at this. So we all have those moments.
When people walk in there, though, do they bring information like birth certificates? Some of them know nothing. So what is there kind of a half bring things and half don't? What do you see?
A lot of them know some information. They don't necessarily bring their birth certificates because they know a lot of the information that's on it. And a lot of information is online. We have over 900 books in our library, which has a good deal of information too. Some states are covered better than others. Some states have more information than others. And so that's where we start, is we look in our books and we get on the computers.
Well, let's say I know nothing about a computer. I'm kind of living under the rock. I really don't want to be bothered with a computer. So I'm walking in there. Is somebody going to help me?
Of course. We try to always have at least one person in the library as a volunteer that's pretty knowledgeable about the computers, and we try and have, we do have a librarian that's there almost every day that is very familiar with our books and our library system. And we could help you both ways.
So have you been to Utah?
Oh, I myself have been there 4 or 5 times. The first time you go is just totally overwhelming. 5 floors of information, and you just don't hardly know where to go, which place to start.
Oh my goodness. And your husband has gone with you?
Oh yes.
And so you've done a lot of research on his family? Or your family?
I've done a lot of information on my family. His family has done a lot of information on his. I have helped on his until I got real interested in mine, and then it's called, hey, every man for himself.
How far back have you gone on your family?
My family goes back to about 1720, from Germany mostly. My husband is Irish, and they go back further than that.
A little about your family. Tell me a couple of secrets.
There's not really many secrets in mine. My family is mostly farmers, and they're shoemakers. Back in Germany, they were fabric dyers, which I thought was kind of interesting. They put this information in the birth records in Germany, what the occupation of the dad was. And so you can find out some, just what they did. My family came over about 1830 from Germany, and it was a big family. They had 9 children, the mom and the pop, and the whole,
Did they come by boat?
Yes, they did.
And did they come into Ellis Island?
No, because Ellis Island was later.
Oh, okay.
So it was Castle Gardens at that time.
Right. And so you were able to find those records?
I actually have not been able to find their immigration records, but I do know from withdrawals from church in Germany that they came in 1830, and then the birth records from the children. The last child was born in the U.S.
Is there anyone else in your family that's interested in this?
I have one cousin, 2 cousins actually, that are fairly interested in it, though they're both still working and it's hard for them to gather information, but we do still swap information.
That's great. I'd also like to introduce Barbara. Barbara is involved in scrapbooking and genealogy.
Yes.
So tell me a little about your background, please.
Well, I've lived in Leisure World for about 19 years. And before that, I started scrapbooking back in the 90s, before it even became very popular. And my husband and I are avid photographers, and we love photography. And we're putting all of these pictures in these sticky magnetic albums, which I found out later are not a good thing. So when I attended a class at a friend of mine's about this new thing called creative scrapbooking, I was hooked, and I became a consultant, and I decided to continue it because I needed to do something with the other side of my brain. I was an accountant, and I preferred something a little more creative. And after that, it's just been 20 years or more of wonderful things to do with scrapbooking.
How many scrapbooks have you put together?
Well, now that's an interesting story. Because of genealogy, when I went to that first class, I was fascinated with what to do with all of these old photographs of my ancestors, and what to do with them, and how to display them creatively. So I found this thing called a heritage album, and so I did my own heritage album with all my ancestors' pictures in it. Then my mom and dad had done a lot of photography too, of my sister and I when we were young. So that meant I probably should do one on my own childhood. So then I have to do them on my children. And now I have to do them on my husband's children. And now there's grandchildren. And so in the last 20 years, I've probably done over 200 or more scrapbooks.
Wow.
Most of which I've given away. Well, not
So
most
this
of
kind of presents a little bit of a problem because how many children do you have?
between the
Between
two of us,
the two?
we have 9.
A big problem. Okay. So let's say that they were all from one family and everybody wants a copy.
Right.
So when you're doing it in the traditional way of scrapbooking, that's very expensive and extremely time consuming.
Absolutely.
So now tell me what you have found that makes it a little bit easier.
Well, one of the things, because I have more than 150 12 by 12 albums, and right now I'm looking for a 12 by 12 scanner, if anybody has an idea about that. But what I found recently is that I can do digital scrapbooking, and it's become such a wonderful thing for me because we have a lot of tools that we use in traditional scrapbooking, and a lot of people say, well, how do you have time to do all of this kind of stuff? Well, it's not one of those things that you can do when you have time. If you don't make a commitment to take care of your photographs, you're never going to do it. They'll be sitting in a box forever, and your kids won't know who that ancestor is or anything like that. So I decided to keep going with the traditional scrapbooking, but it added digital scrapbooking to what I can do. And it's so much quicker and a lot easier to do digitally. I've been using several programs. I use Word for Windows and just add some photographs to those. My husband's father was an incredible writer. We found manuscripts all over the place and poems that he had written and all kinds of things like that. In addition to the fact that he has photographs going back to 1933 when he was in the Civilian Conservation Corps. So he had written a story about his life and saved all those photographs. So we've put them all together and they're ending up in 2 volumes. But most of it's being done digitally. Like I say, it was done on Word for Windows. Some of it was done on Photoshop Elements. Some of the scrapbooking is done on a couple of programs that you can download from the internet. And I just love it. It is just so easy. But I'm still going to keep up with the creative part of it. It's just as creative to do digitally, too, by the way. But
I would think
fun
there's
to do
a
both.
difference in cost, a big difference in cost when you're doing the regular scrapbooking
Right.
versus the digital, because you need to use so many elements and
Yes.
paste them on and so forth.
Right.
Plus, it's very difficult to duplicate that. So the digital is wonderful.
That's true. And you can get some 12 by 12, printed commercially, and that makes it a lot less expensive. Of course, there's always the ink to consider. I keep using a very lot of ink.
Are the kids excited about this?
Oh, yes. All of them wonder, when something happens to you, Mom, what are we going to do with all those books? Well, at this moment, I don't care what they do with those books. They're my memories. And for my husband and I to remember all these trips that we've taken and all of our fun years at Leisure World and all that kind of thing.
Is there a particular way that you suggest people start putting, either one of you ladies can answer this, start putting the pictures together? I know I have done it, and I'll share my way, but share yours as well.
Well, I think...
A system. Do you have a system?
I think there's, as an important part of the photo that you put in there, is the story that goes with it. And that's where it comes to the genealogy. Because if I put a picture of my ancestors, my great-grandfather's, truck, or his car, there's a story about him taking that car all the way from Indiana to Texas. And unless you put the story with the photograph, it's not nearly as interesting. So journaling is really important in scrapbooking. You tell the story of what you were doing, where you were going, how you were feeling, and that really helps.
Isn't it exciting to be able to touch that photograph, close your eyes, and you feel like that person is with you?
That's right.
Because you've learned so much about that person. For me, I do a lot of video scrapbooking, per se. And so I do a lot of what you're doing, but then I also take and sit down and I'll bring all the pictures up and then I'll talk about the pictures, the stories that I heard, or I'll make a phone call to a relative back east or wherever they might be and ask them, do you remember Mama? Do you remember Papa? Do you remember Aunt so-and-so? And then they'll tell me what their story is. Then I'll call their sister. Total different story. But it's okay because I put both stories to the pictures. There are so many avenues that we can do to make these memories stay forever. And I know as far as with me, I have a lot of jewelry that was my grandmother's and maybe her mother's. But when my mother passed on, she left all the jewelry to me. And I'll look at photographs and I'll say, I've got that pin. So sometimes I'll take the pin, put it on, and then I'll hold Grandma's picture up over here. And I feel that there's just such a connection because now I'll then give that on to my daughter. But there's a story. So we're doing these stories in different ways. So there's something for everyone.
That reminds me of one other kind of scrapbook that I'm making for my children, which consists of all the little artifacts that we have that have been handed down from the family, not just jewelry, but other things like an old kerosene lamp that was saved from a log cabin. Well, why would the kids, if I don't photograph that and tell the story about what went with it, and why, you know, the log cabin that your great-great-grandmother had, and this was the only thing that was saved. So those kind of stories go along with the photographs and are very important, so they'll know that these things that we are collecting from our ancestors are not just things that they don't know what to do with or sell at an antique store or something.
And as far as, go ahead.
That's very true. And that's part of how you get people interested in genealogy too, is by telling the stories behind the families. My family, when it moved from Wisconsin to Nebraska, we have a whole story about them riding the train all the way down, and you know where they stopped and how they got established in Nebraska. And it makes your family come to life, and it helps you interest some of the younger people while there's still others around to ask. That's a big problem in genealogy, is there's no one there to ask anymore.
I find that to be so true, and that's why in my case I called the relatives, and some of them are in their high 90s. But as I mentioned, their story is different than someone else's story. But I love to hear both stories. And even the younger ones, that they remember the story that their mama told them, which is a third story. So it kind of it's pretty exciting to hear these things. And I do mine a lot of times over the telephone. But of course we now have Skype and many other ways to do things. And then I'll put that all into a video.
That's nice.
So what I'd like to do with what you're doing eventually is sit down with you again and take your stories from your concept, tie them together and video them. So we really have something.
Well, they marry very well.
That's why I thought a program like this would be wonderful for the folks at Leisure World and on Olive Sail Beach.
That's exactly why same people you'll find in the same kinds of places. You know, in the video club, you'll find people in the scrapbook club. In the genealogy club, you'll find the same people in the scrapbook club. Or vice versa, you'll find people in the genealogy club that are now in the quilting club. And it's just a wonderful way in Leisure World, I think, that we combine a lot of different interests. And
You're involved in the quilting club as well?
That's right.
So have you taken photographs and put them on fabric and quilted around that?
I'm getting ready to do that. Because of all of our photography over the years, we've taken a lot of beautiful scenic things and bears in Yellowstone and things like this. So I'm just getting ready to produce my very first one.
I think
there
a family
is a
one.
wonderful, you know, we have the ability now to print on fabric in our inkjet printer. And so I'm looking forward to doing that. I've not done it yet.
A number of years ago, I did that because I was printing on the fabric, and I made my own quilt. We don't want to discuss what it looked like, but the bottom line is it was actually something really nice I gave to my mama, and then she had that with her in the hospital. But it was just something that I made with pictures of her family on it, and it's just very sentimental.
Yeah.
Kind of makes me tear up.
One of the things that we've done in the scrapbook club and in the quilting club is we've had little heritage things. And I have a quilt that my great-grandmother made, and then one that my mother made for me, inspired by the one the great-grandmother made for her. And keeping those kind of photographs and keeping them safe, you know, we had a program in the genealogy club about how to keep your artifacts safe and how to take good care of them.
Can you give me a couple of pointers, either of you, about keeping them safe?
I think Linda gave us a lot of good pointers on the day.
She really did. You don't keep your quilts in plastic, which we thought protected them, but what it does is all the harmful particles in the air are now trapped in there with your quilt, and it can destroy it as opposed to keeping it good. You keep it more in a cardboard type of box, wrapped in a light colored sheet, and you fold it and unfold it about every 6 months so that there's not always one side out.
What about the photographs? Are you using acid-free?
Everything that we use is acid-free, buffered, photo-safe. You know, even though I've gone to just plain 8.5 by 11 digital scrapbooks, they're in photo-safe sleeves. And the fun part about that is that it just takes a few minutes to put a fancy little sticker or something on it.
So we're
one
talking
click here, one click here, and you're
right.
done.
We're talking about maybe $30 to do an 8.5 by 11 or a 12 by 12 scrapbooking page.
Yeah, by the time you-
versus right by the time you're putting all the little tchotchkes on them, and then doing it digitally, it's time consuming as well. But you're not spending that tremendous amount of money. Plus, you can make copies.
Right.
So it's kind of the wave of the future, I think.
I think so too.
So that'll be nice for the kids because each one will get their own copy.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I personally did is when I gave the people the copies, the families, I customized the very beginning of the book to that person. So they don't know that brothers and sisters got all the same thing.
All of my kids' books and the grandkids' books start out with a family tree from the genealogy stuff. So that's kind of a fun thing for them to have, to know their family tree. Because if I could prove it, and we can't right now, but if I could prove it, I'm supposedly, my 13th great-grandfather was William Bradford from the Mayflower. But it's one of those things you can't prove yet. They may never prove. But it's kind of a fun thing for them to think that.
You're a very elegant lady.
Thank you.
And do you have any interesting people in your background
Not really.
that you could talk about?
I have a great-grandfather that changed his name. We can't figure out why he changed his name. We hired a professional genealogist to give us a hint on there because we were unable to trace him back any further, and she's the one that discovered that he had changed his name.
When he came to this country?
No, he had
Before?
he was born and raised in New York.
Oh.
And he came to Nebraska and somewhere in between changed his name. Changed his first name to his middle name and, just switched the order there and completely changed his last
I might be
name.
interested in his background.
We've been trying to find that out.
That's so funny. You have nothing like that hidden in your family tree?
No, what I did find out is that my great-grandfather was in the Civil War. He was on the Union side, and 10 days after he was recruited in Kentucky, he was in training, and a band of Southerners came up, and I guess they all became prisoners.
Oh.
This huge battle, which is, a long story. But the upshot was that they had no food or supplies to hold prisoners. So they told them all if they would go home and they would release them, not fight anymore. Well, naturally they became AWOL and they got in trouble with the army, but in the end, President Lincoln pardoned them all if they would go back and fight. So they did. And he ended up in this obscure division called the Mississippi River Marines. And my husband is actually plotting all of the different places that these Marines went on the Mississippi in their ram boats. And we're trying to put that into a story with pictures. And so the combination of trying to get this all together is kind of fun and challenging. You feel like you're a detective, right?
Absolutely.
When you're a genealogist.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you girls sit and talk to each other while you're doing your work?
We do.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, as far as, oh, I found this, and oh, I found that, and suggest?
It's the library is not like your normal library. We do talk. We
Yes.
have discussion groups every Wednesday afternoon during library hours. Topics sometimes chosen by members of our club, and other times we just pick topics to talk about, and everyone is allowed to discuss it, and we all learn from each other.
Do we have anything exciting coming up for the month of October?
We have an open house coming up on the 24th of October. We'll have some refreshments, and we're wanting to introduce our library and what we do to the rest of Leisure World. We just think it's the greatest.
Tell me again what the times are.
It's on the 24th of October from 1 to 4 in the afternoon.
And the regular days that the library is open?
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 1 to 4.
Great. And share with me what's going on with you.
Well, in October, there's usually this thing we do with the Scrapbooking Club called the Croptoberfest. The Croptoberfest will be held on the last Saturday of the month, October, I'm sorry, October the 26th. And we have Clubhouse 3, Room 1, from 9 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon. So you can come all day. You can come and share with us. We'll have a lunch served. We're going to have all kinds of little prizes to be given away for, you know, if you complete pages, you get a special little treat, that kind of thing.
I've given away most of my cropping tools. So I'd walk in there with pretty much some photographs. What happens?
You get to sit all day by yourself if you want to and just sort those old photographs. But you need to know what you want to do with them. I have mine sorted into piles. You know, this is going to go in the kids' album, this is going to go in the grandkids' album, this is going to go in our life story album. You know, our life story album is probably 150 volumes right now.
But I can use your cropping tools?
Absolutely. There's all kinds of tools available. Myself, I have a Cricut machine. For people who don't know what that is, it cuts die cuts, it cuts letters, all kinds of things, so you can match up your photographs or your paper that you're using to your letters.
So this is a great marriage.
Yes.
It certainly is.
I mean, starting with starting with you or starting with you, it doesn't matter. Whatever is more exciting for you. I found that putting the pictures together, one of the local stores has a machine where they will scan the photographs for you. It's a machine that it feeds through. And you can put your pictures in a shoebox per se and just separate them by whatever you wish, by date or by person or whatever it is. Bring them over to this machine and it just filters right through. And then you get a DVD back. So I believe it's maybe 250 pictures that you can do on one DVD, or 250 pictures, 300. But you'll know more about that in the future. And that way, at least you've got them on a DVD, so you can pull them and put them into that marvelous digital scrapbooking that you're doing. And in your case, maybe you'll be able to bring them into the Ancestry program.
There are pictures on most of the Ancestry programs that are available, so that you can put pictures right with your information.
That's a great way, because I know so many people I talk to have box loads of pictures, and they'd be like, oh, I've got so many pictures, what am I supposed to do? The kids don't want them. That's the story, you know, that we all hear. And in this way, at least they're organized. My mom used to tell me, put the name and the information on the back of the picture.
Yes.
I'm sure yours did too. So for all the younger ones out there that don't take any pictures, at least if you're doing them on your cell phone, make sure at least you put some kind of a tagline on there. So please, one more time, tell me, when is your class?
Our Croptoberfest is October the 26th, Saturday, and that's room 1, Clubhouse 3.
And it's once a month, basically, that you have your open house?
On the 4th Saturday of every month. In fact, tomorrow.
Okay, and quickly?
The Genealogy Club meets once a month also in Clubhouse 3, Room 1, has a special meeting. We generally have speakers, and then the library is open on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 1 to 4, and we're having an open house in October on the 24th, 1 to 4. All are invited.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.